And if you guys could unmute, please.
Looks like we're good here.
Great.
All good.
Andy? All right, great. Well, welcome everybody. We're happy to be here today. Happy you're here today. We have Sitecore and Layer One doing a webinar around e-commerce and some of the journeys that we see our clients take and what that architecture looks like and how it impacts the bottom line. Before we get started here, a couple housekeeping items. First off, we're using a new webinar platform, Webinar Ninja. It's the first time we're using it. So after the webinar, we're going to send out a SurveyMonkey survey. Would love to hear any feedback that you have on the platform, and we can share that with the good folks at Webinar Ninja. Today, if any questions come up along the way, how we're going to address that is on the right side of the screen here. You should see a chat box. Let me just type something in here so you can all see that. You should see a chat bubble come up. That's where you can put in any questions that you have. What we're going to do is stop periodically through the presentation here. And hello, Colburn, and address any of those questions. So, feel free to ask anything you want. We don't get really technical today, but with Andy and Chad here on our panel, I think we can really address anything that comes up. So, so let the questions fly.
Absolutely.
So today we have three hosts, me being one, Brody Buss. I'm the founder of Layer One. Been doing this in some form or fashion for 2 decades, web marketing and e-commerce. And I probably bring the most to the table as far as digital marketing today. And we also have Andy with us from Sitecore. Andy, you want to give your introduction?
You bet. Thanks, Brody. So my name is Andy Coys. I'm the Commerce Solution Engineer at Sitecore. I've been at Sitecore for about 3 years, a little over 3 years, working with Experience Platform and the Commerce Platform. And in my career, I've worked with a number of commerce engines, both as point solutions and as part of a unified platform. And I'm happy to be here to share that perspective of these various approaches. Chad?
Thanks, Andy. So my name's Chad Albrecht. I'm the CEO of Layer One. I've been with Layer One for about 2.5 years. My background ranges from deep electrical engineering work and custom software development all the way through e-commerce, ERP, and CRM solutions. Really, as Brody alluded to, a lot of deep technical organizations, and I think what we are going to talk today about is really some common issues that we see in the marketing space, and be happy to address anything that any questions that you guys have, or any ideas that you have for follow-up webinars and communications. So, pleasure to be here.
Great, thanks, Chad. Thanks, Andy. All right, so what are the topics that we're going to look at today? We are going to talk about some key challenges that we see our clients facing today as commerce professionals. What are some of the things that they're talking about? We're going to look at where you are today in your commerce journey. Where are you in the maturity of that journey? It's important because one of the pillars of what we're going to talk about today is where you're going and where you need to be and what that gap looks like. That will help you make decisions as far as next steps, both for your team and your software decisions that you have to make. We'll look at some real world journeys that we see our clients taking. We'll talk about some guiding principles for that journey, and then we'll finalize it with kind of some recap of the entire deck and try to address any final questions that come up. So really today, I think the main goal for us is to help you understand how do you assess where you're at today with your e-commerce initiatives, and then where are you going, and how should you be thinking about your next steps. So let's get into it. What are some of the things that we're hearing out on the street in client meetings, where does e-commerce fit in for us? They want to know, how do we not disrupt our channels? How do we migrate over to e-commerce? How much is it going to cost? How long does it take to get up and running? Usually right before cost, people ask how long it takes to get up and running. How do you calculate ROI for e-commerce? So we're not going to address all of these questions today, but these are the things that we're hearing in meetings today. They're current and issues that people are having.
I think the important piece here is there's a lot of uncertainty, right? The market's changed a lot in the last 5 years, and these questions are all really speaking to a level of uncertainty, specifically in B2B manufacturing. How do we do this? How do we move forward, and how do we be successful at it? So, yeah.
So our first piece that we're going to take a look at when you're doing an assessment of where you're at is we think about maturity in a two-dimensional spectrum. So on the x-axis, we really look at what kind of skills does your team have today? Do you understand e-commerce? Have you built an e-commerce site before? Has your team built an e-commerce site before? And if so, how are you using the e-commerce site? Are you driving performance through KPIs? What types of things are you trying to do with your e-commerce site? So on the very left-hand side of the spectrum is somebody that maybe, there is no e-commerce site and you have not built the e-commerce site before. And you're really not sure what the journey looks like. And that's many of you out there, but that's a reality of what people are facing today. Somewhere in the middle is you got to the point where you're transacting credit cards and you have most of your SKUs on the website and you have an e-commerce director and you're starting to drive next steps through using KPIs, and your team understands the direction that you're going. And then finally, maybe a very advanced state of this is you're using marketing automation, you're segmenting buyers, you're very far along in how you use your e-commerce site. So that's sort of on the x-axis.
On the other axis, we have complexity, and we like to think about this as kind of a resistance to increasing or improving your skills. One being not very complex, very simple site, maybe a CMS, but very, very little e-commerce presence or experience. And then as we move up, we end up with more complicated or complex environments and platforms, maybe some level of pricing rules, some level of SKU complexity. And then at the top end, you have a lot of custom integrations, multiple sites, integration with all of your back-end solutions or systems. And if you think about your ability to move or improve in the marketing space, the more complex you are, the harder it can be sometimes. So it's kind of the resistance from left to right movement, if you will.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. I think that the key when you look at these two spectrums is to look at where, when you can plot yourself on this matrix and where are you today. So future state, the next step after you understand where you're at, you really want to understand where you're going. And the path to get there is not, a one-step linear path. It could be, many micro steps to get there, but it starts to give you a map as to how and you're going to get there. So today we're going to look at three typical journeys that we see in this matrix. And the first one, I'm going to jump back and forth here to show how we've mapped this out. The first one is the modernist. And that's somebody that, has high complexity, but their team has sort of been pulled along into it. And so that could be a custom solution where there's many complicated integrations, many SKUs, and the team really is kind of holding on and really not driving any of the metrics on the site. They're not doing anything with marketing automation. They're really just trying to keep the lights on. But the site is successful, and there's a lot happening on the site. And so we're going to go deeper into the modernist today because we see it quite a bit. The other one that we have here is the multi-brand slow roll. So this is a good example of maybe a holding company that wants to migrate many sites over to one singular platform over time. So they'll bring over one brand, make it the prototype, and then try to clone that out and use one engine, potentially different front ends, and try to use some efficiency here of reuse and reuse of templates, reuse of this e-commerce engine. We call that the multi-brand slow roll. And then lastly here we have the out-of-the-box proven move. And this is one that where maybe they don't have an e-commerce site today, and we really don't know what they need. And so this is something where it needs to prove itself out before any more money is going to get invested in the e-commerce site. So this is where something, where some of these out-of-the-box solutions might make sense because they bring features to the table that you don't have to imagine. Once you evolve past that, you start to have your appetite grows for more custom solutions. And but until you get there, some of the out-of-the-box features work very well. So as promised, periodically we're going to stop and see if there's any questions. So far, we have no questions that that haven't been answered yet already. It looks like someone's.
Yeah, I answered one question about the fact that we will be making a version of this recording available to everybody that attended today. We will be slicing it up too for our blog. I guess just a reminder that we're a statement, I guess, that we're launching a new website this week. So you'll likely see this this recording on our new blog, our new site next week. So look for that next week, as well as we'll be emailing you a link to the online version.
Great, thanks, Chad. And you know what? I'll pass it back to you for the guiding principles of the journey. How about that?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So we talked about kind of where you are, that first dot. Where are you today, and maybe some of the thoughts about where you want to be. But the most important piece that we run into and where we help our clients the most is these guiding principles for the journey. You're not going to go from point A to point B in days or months. I mean, this is a multi-year journey to get there. And so there's 5 real things that we use. And for the clients of ours that are on this webinar, I mean, you guys know that we talk about these things on a regular basis. The first thing is using empiricism. So making sure that you're observing, is what you're trying to do actually happening? And if not, can you make changes that get you to the thing that you want to do? And so we talk about these as running experiments, trying to time box things, trying to limit the amount of risk that you take as you're making decisions, because everybody has to do something for the first time. And you don't just suddenly have knowledge about how to become an expert digital marketer. You have to cross many new territories to be good at this and to get maturity on this. So use these experiments to learn as you go. And fundamentally, number 2 is reduce complexity. If you've got a lot of point solutions out there, a lot of disparate systems, data spread all over the place, you can create a very disjoint experience for your end users. The example that I like to talk about is if you've got a very complicated SKU system even, it can create confusion for your buyers or potential buyers in terms of what they're looking for. And if you can make that simpler and make it easier for them to find, and we'll even talk about using search in a future slide, you're going to increase revenues, you're going to increase the experience and the overall satisfaction in the brand if you try to reduce complexity. And that ties in nicely to making pragmatic technology choices. If you don't understand today how to do something, buying a 15 different point solutions and trying to connect them all together is going to lead to complexity and is going to lead to problems connecting them all and be very, very expensive. So try to be practical. Like, can I buy something, learn from it, turn things on as I need it, and get the highest ROI from those choices. And then investing in people, making sure that your team understands what the goal is. Are they trained on the platform? Try to limit the number of point solutions that you have to train your team on. Talk about your clients or your market's buying experience. What does the experience look like, whether that's in store or online or via email? Do they understand that you're creating a brand experience? So spending time and dollars on the team. And then finally, arguably number 5 could be number 1, but use data to do all these things. Making sure that you understand what visitors to your site are doing, what visitors to your stores are doing if you have brick and mortar, and really trying to understand, are we achieving what we set out to achieve? How do we measure it? How do we make this experiment measurable? And then really treating this set of 5 as a cohesive set. And we're going to talk about each of these things as we look at some of these journeys that we've laid out here, specifically the modernist. So if we think about more about complexity and we dive into what is complexity, it's really the number of things that need to be maintained and managed. And those could be integrations, those could be catalogs, SKUs, websites, right? The more number of things that need to be looked at and managed and potentially break. I've seen catalogs, products get misskewed, mislabeled, and that leads to decreasing revenue. So, all complexity, higher complexity ultimately is going to lead to some level of decrease in revenue or loss of revenue. So some complexity is natural. You need some level of complexity. You're probably not going to have a really simple SKU system. If you're selling on multiple channels, you're going to have some level of integrations. The complexity is natural. As you move from left to right in your skill maturity, you typically are going to increase complexity. And what we're really talking about in these tenets here is, are you making things more complex than you need to be? Are you doing it because it's clear for you, but what is your end user, your visitor, your buyer, your market? Are they reaping benefits from that, or is it just something that's more convenient for you? So we want to manage that and keep that in check. And an example that I bring in often when we're talking about this is, we had a client last year that had a very complicated SKU system. They were going to make everything available with search, all of their SKUs available with search. And what we ended up doing is building a single product family page, and we added a little guided selling on that page to select. It was basically a coupling manufacturer, and the couplings you could choose the size of the bores in the coupling. So it was a little bit of a guided selling page, and it made the buying simpler for the visitor to the site. So think about complexity. How do I ease into a sale? How do I ease into make it easier for your clients to buy? So certainly a big piece when you're thinking about complexity is the commerce platform, your marketing platform in general. And there's really 2 things that we're going to talk about today: the more traditional point solution or best in breed, where you take a lot of different products from a lot of different vendors and you tie them together. Think about tying, Sitecore into Salesforce, into HubSpot, into Shopify, and you're making all of these tools try to talk to one another. And as you can see from this slide, like certainly the blue arrows are integrations. We're increasing complexity as we move through our phases here. And so, we're gonna talk about the next solution, which is the unified approach. And a modern unified platform has those integrations already done. And Andy's going to talk a little bit more about Sitecore and Sitecore Commerce in a couple of future slides. But we see a lot of the modern unified platforms here doing a really nice job of creating, let's call them pre-existing integrations that are tested, that are solid, that keep complexity low. And as you mature as a marketing and commerce organization, you're really turning on features. And I know some of our clients that are on the webinar here today are going through this right now, that we're starting to do A/B testing, starting to talk about personalization. And the platform's been there the whole time, the capability has been there the whole time, and all we do is we start using it. So it's really a very frictionless movement from left to right in today's modern unified platform. Some of the drawbacks here, or the pros and cons, is unified is going to be a little bit more expensive out of the gate. If you know you're going to mature, you're going to spend a little bit more money on day one with licensing costs, maybe standing it up, the power, the horsepower of the platform, a little bit more money on phase one, on day one. But as you move forward, as you kind of see the best in breed or point solution cross there, you end up spending less in the long term. And most of this has to do with the fragility of point solutions being integrated together, combined with the amount of training that you need to do on your team on all these different interfaces, all of these different ways of thinking, these knowledge paradigms, if you will. They're very high cost to get all of them glued together. And then finally, the data being sewn back together. So, some pros and cons here, or really some highlights of the two. Best in breed, typically, point solutions, typically, they do what they do very, very well. So if you've got a low number of objectives, point solutions can be really your go-to, because those user interfaces are usually pretty high feature, very smooth for what they do. Can again lead to higher complexity. Lower entry cost allows you to experiment a little bit more. So we think that as you're on the left side of the skill spectrum, point solutions probably make the most sense. And as you move from left to right, moving to a more unified platform is probably the way to go. And we list the highlights there of the unified platform. Easier to scale that, easier to deal with more users. And the piece that is the most important, and now Andy will speak to this, is you have data naturally in one place. And what we're talking about there is visitor data, buying data, purchase history, goals that they've hit on the website, how they've interacted with you both in-store and online. A unified platform will gather that data very naturally. And ultimately, that gives you a single reporting tool set. Right, so you can collect all of the data, report on a single visitor, a single user, a single customer from a centralized place. And we'll do future webinars on this concept. It's really a CDP concept. Sitecore has their XDB feature, which is really a lightweight CDP, which is a client data platform, which is all the rage in MarTech today. So we can look at this, we can look at complexity. We have a ranking system that we use for each of these, Brody. If you go to the next slide, what we try to do is look at what's high complexity, what's low complexity in our DM3 assessment. So if you look at the top line there, number of integrations, anything more than 10 integrations, we consider that a 5 in complexity. And we look at a lot of different areas, a lot of different things as part of our DM3 assessment. And we produce a single score. So we basically have that 1 to 5 number that we can plot on the on our 2x2 against skills. So complexity versus skills. This is really the complexity piece of it, and we look at a lot of different areas.
So thanks, Chad. We're gonna hop back here to the x-axis for a moment and just talk a little. We talked about complexity on the y-axis. On the x-axis, you have how skilled is your team, and we talked about the unified platforms and some of the benefits there around complexity. And now we'll talk a little bit about how, as your team becomes more skilled and you want to do more advanced things with your e-commerce system, it's natural to want to combine content and commerce to create this customer experience. You're really, it's what happens before the transaction, what happens after the transaction. The transaction is important, collecting money, of course, but you also need to think about how we upsell and cross-sell. What do we do with the information afterwards? Those are things that, with centralized data, it makes it much more realistic as your appetite grows for marketing automation and some of the more things mature marketers are doing. So, just naturally, you're going to want to communicate through all of your channels with one centralized message. So this is just a quick graphic showing that, you might be pushing things to your web app, through email, through your social channels, and you want one centralized message. Not only do you want the push of information to be consistent, but you want the data and what the activities were on each person or company to come back to one database. And then you can take action on that data, build segments from it, all the things that you're going to want to do to really sort of drive and optimize your site and your message. And with different, point solutions, it does become difficult to do that. You're sort of always chasing the integration and pushing data around. And so in the beginning, these point solutions can be really attractive because you can stand them up quickly. The entry point from a cost perspective is lower, but as you mature as a team, your appetite will call for something that's more conducive to a unified system.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
If we jump back to the previous slide for a second,
Yep.
we're as you mature, you really start talking about the experience, right? The brand experience, and what are potential buyers and buyers experiencing as they interact with you, whether it be on social channels, your commerce site, your website, in store, mobile, right? We have all these different channels today, all these different ways that people get exposure to our brand. And a more mature marketing team is talking about that experience. And to Brody's point, you need to understand what's the profile of visitors that are coming to the site. What have they done? How have they experienced us as a brand, as an organization? And that content and that data is critical. You can't make the decisions or know if you're being successful without having that in really one spot.
Yeah, we hear a lot of people talk about, a lot of clients that want personalization without kind of realizing that the data is driving that. It's an easy thing to want, but to get there, there's steps to get there. You have to have the right system and team set up. So, and it all comes back to, like we're talking about, having the data in one spot.
And I don't know if we're covering it today. I'm trying to think about future slides, but the data in one place too. Do we talk about the data privacy pieces at all?
No, we don't cover that, but you can feel free to kind of cover the basics of it. I think it's an important topic.
Yeah, data in one place, with all these data privacy laws, whether it be GDPR or the California privacy laws, if you have data in multiple places and you get a user request to be forgotten, that can be a very costly, complicated experience to go through and try to delete all of the personally identifiable information from all your systems. It's in one place. You only have that PII in one place. It's being used by multiple systems then, or within your overall ecosystem. It's a lot easier to deal with these data privacy laws then.
Yeah. It's that one's going to sneak up on people too once there's some precedent set and some actual cases out there. Everybody's going to try to catch up to that, and it's another one that's easier said than done. So something to start thinking about now.
Yeah, we'll be doing other webinars and knowledge sharing sessions in the future on data privacy and Sitecore.
Yeah. So again, we do light and full assessments. At the end of this, we'll talk a little bit about our offering. We do have a free assessment. We'll do a light version to help you understand where you are as an e-commerce platform and team. So we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. So at this point, let's take a quick check here. Any questions? Let's see, I guess with no questions so far.
Does anybody have any
Covering
questions?
everything.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions that we can answer right now while we're taking a little break here that they haven't typed in yet? Silence is a no, I guess.
Yes, covering everything.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's deep dive into this modernist. You know, what does this client look like? And we see a lot of this. We deal with a lot of manufacturers that are trying to improve their digital marketing and online presence, sew it together with their brick and mortar. A lot of these manufacturers have a distribution network. Some of them have an e-commerce system, whether it be direct to consumer and or some sort of consumer e-commerce experience, or sorry, distributor e-commerce experience, often built 15, 20, 25 years ago. Kind of they were on the forefront of it. Very customized. There wasn't a lot of stuff off the shelf that did what they wanted to. So there's a lot of custom software combined with point solutions, a lot of heavy integration. And what we find the team struggling with is, you know, hey, we want to personalize. Hey, we want to think about the whole experience. We want to do all these new things. We want to do marketing automation, email automation. And it's really, it's kind of a barrier from moving left to right because they are early in their skills. They're successful, but in terms of modern digital marketing, they're on the left side of the skills spectrum, and they're struggling to move left to right. And so the executive team often comes together and says, what do we need to do to get over this? And the first thing they usually do is they choose a modern unified platform like Sitecore. And with that, they really remove their barriers from left to right because they get so much out of the box. And they can ultimately collapse everything into a single solution. And it's usually not an overnight type of thing. It's not something that you go, okay, we're going to take all of these point solutions and just be Sitecore today. Maybe this is working for you, this is working for you, but we know that we can collapse the majority of the functionality into a single platform. So phase one might be, you know, we can take 60% of the point solutions, stand up Sitecore Commerce, and get it working, and maybe do a few integrations. Again, we're trying to reduce complexity here. So we know that we've got a solid platform with commerce. We're gonna reduce the number of integrations from, let's say, 5 or 6 to 3. And as we go to phase 2, we're gonna turn on more features, maybe customize those features a little bit. And one thing we haven't talked about is a modern unified platform isn't what we call tightly wound. It allows for customization. It allows for a development team to enhance, replace, and ultimately interact with other systems very easily. And Sitecore, specifically Sitecore 9 and beyond, has done a really, really good job of allowing very fluid customizations, as opposed to some of the other platforms that are out there where it can only be customized by the platform company. So, you know, in phase 2 here, maybe we make a couple of customizations to some of the functionality to duplicate what was done in the custom systems. And now we've got everything in there. Phase 3, we could turn on even more features. We don't even show phase 4, which could be maybe there's something that Sitecore Commerce doesn't do that we'd like to do. Maybe we want to bring in a PIM, or we want to bring in, you know, some advanced channel interaction. We can go ahead and increase complexity a little bit after future phases for specific point needs. And a modern unified platform does that very, very well.
Yeah, Chad, I don't think we ever want to say someone shouldn't be out there looking at tools, experimenting with smaller standalone tools. I mean, that's the world we live in, right? Everybody has looked at the MarTech, Chief MarTech, you know, graphic, and they know that there's 5,000 different technologies out there. You should always be exploring, but when it's time to go prime time with it, really use it, you want to see how can you integrate it into your unified system. So it's always not like, you know, one or the other.
Yeah,
And potentially you already have a point solution that you like, maybe marketing automation capability, right? That your users are used to. It's okay to keep that.
Yeah.
You know, we'll integrate. It's a one-off integration, so you know that could be done.
Andy, and I think the point here too is that you guys have really, Sitecore has really thought about that, right? Made the integration of these other systems very, very easily with things like XConnect. So it's built for this experience. The other side of this is that you know, most of our clients don't need 80% of the functionality in these point solutions. So what you get in a rich platform like Sitecore Commerce usually meets the need of, you know, most of our clients.
Yeah, I guess the last point on the modernist before we cover off on it is, you know, your team. Really, the objective of lowering complexity is taking your team out of the firefighting that happens day to day and making them more aligned with, like, how do we improve and get aligned with the strategy and drive KPIs, and you know, you can start improving your team's skill set versus, you know, like I said, just fighting fires and figuring out how to get to the next day. So lastly, we showcase that here. This is simplifying this, but you know, your budget for something like the modernist, you might have high upfront costs. You know, you likely, if you are a modernist, you have a highly functioning, high transaction e-commerce site that the bar cannot go down at launch, right? You cannot make it, you cannot be worse off from your executive's viewpoint. So you really have to make sure that you get things right, things are tight. And so that's why you're going to see a high upfront implementation cost, and you could have some licensing costs upfront. But the goal here is, the trend should be that you're now able to see some averaging out over time where your costs are going down, and you're able to invest in your team and make them better. And like I said, be able, where your team is focused on KPIs and improving conversions and obviously revenue and you know, margins and things like that. So
yeah, we show the pragmatic technology choice logo on that slide. We should also include invest in the team too, because we, you know, that's a big part of the budgeting curve. So what do you get? You know, you, as a modernist, you've chosen a unified platform. What do the results look like? You know, I think the biggest one on here are some of the bolds on the left, the holistic customer profile. And as you're talking about brand experience, you now have the data in one place. You can deal with data privacy laws better. You can deal with reporting better. You can do cross-sell, upsell on your commerce channel, and personalization seamlessly. It's part of the platform. You can just do it, and you're talking about it. Lower risk of employee-dependent customization. So what we mean by that is having an employee do something that's going to break your system or break the flow of data. Tracking sessions, looking at how clients are, or how potential buyers are interacting on multiple channels. And then the last two is, you know, with lower chances of things breaking, you reduce cost, and hopefully you increase your experience, which increases revenue. Andy, do you want to talk a little bit about the SXA product as it relates to Sitecore Commerce?
Absolutely, yeah. So Sitecore Commerce is actually natively installed on top of the Sitecore Experience platform, which is a CMS. And so the win there is that there's no need for integration because it is complex, it is costly, right? And it is built using modern microservices, so you can scale it out, you know, whatever you need in any dimension, actually. But it's incredibly powerful from a perspective that it actually comes with a reference storefront. So there's a storefront that's ready to go. You can actually, once you install Sitecore Commerce, you can start placing orders. It's really cool from that perspective. And it's built using what we call SXA. So it's the Sitecore Experience Accelerator. And it's a set of building blocks. We call them components, right? But it's a set of building blocks that your authors or merchandisers can drag and drop across on a page and construct any page. And this is where you can actually start using and bringing in content that you may have, a traditional CMS content, and potentially commerce content like catalog items, right, all on a single page, whether it's a traditional CMS page or you know, a commerce specific page. For business users, you get a full set of tools. You get things like the merchandising capability to manage multiple catalogs. You can have organizational catalogs, you can have regional catalogs, or whatever you like, right? It has an inventory capability, so you can have store-specific inventory, warehouse-specific inventory, or regional, right? It does support capability for managing prices, so you can have tiered pricing and multiple prices, right? If you actually go back to that previous slide, please.
Yep.
Yeah, some of the other business tools are the capability for managing promotions, right? So buy one, get one free, and a number of other ones. It supports, from a CSR perspective, the ability to view orders or manage customers in their specific orders. So you can do RMAs and so on. There's actually a couple other things that are very unique to Cycle Commerce. That's the ability to let business users go in and actually manage relationships, right? So they themselves can go in and create a different relationship. So like an upsell or a cross-sell, which are out of the box, they can maybe put in a warranty relationship or documentation relationship, right? So you can associate that with a particular product. And then finally, a composer. The composer is the capability that allow the business users to go in and add specific properties to a product, right? So there's a set of properties that are out of the box with a product, but you can potentially add additional specific properties to a particular product.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, Andy, and maybe you want to talk a little bit more about this, but it's all part of that personalization and a lot of the capabilities that are in point solutions with personalization, cross-sell, upsell, and creating that relationship with a buyer or a potential buyer. You know, this is a pretty advanced platform that allows you to sell on multiple channels and also use the data to create the experience, so that you're not getting something that is just, you know, half-baked. This is something that is pretty advanced, customizable, and ties into the Sitecore that you may be already using as a CMS.
Yeah, correct. And so as far as the unified platform, which actually Gartner calls it the digital experience platform, right? It's the ability to personalize and manage the experience for the visitor from no matter what part of the journey they're at, right? Whether they're just starting out and maybe they're doing exploration, right? And you can start feeding them commerce ideas or commerce products, maybe bestsellers, or with this product, other products are being recommended, right? And as they progress through that journey, we can do more specific commerce-specific items, like maybe promotions specific to that particular item and what they viewed previously. So using that analytics data, or maybe offering tier pricing suggestions, right? So if you buy 10 of these items, you know, you get a reduced price on it, right? So all of that capability is a combination of both commerce and that CMS, right, as part of the unified platform.
Right.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about the end user, but can you expand a little bit about customizing the admin tool, you know, to flow with someone's already existing business?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything within Sitecore, as you know, could be extended, right? So if there's a particular capability or function that doesn't come out of the box, your IT team can extend it, or your partners can extend it, right, to support that particular requirement. And the same goes for the business tools for managing the commerce capabilities, right? If there's a need for extension and a supported requirement, that can be easily done.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. All right, let's take one more last break here before the end and see if there's any we still have there's no questions. So you guys are making it easy on us. All right.
Let's recap a little bit, kind of what we talked about, and dig in maybe just a little bit deeper on some of these guiding principles. So Agile Commerce, that's the first guiding principle around using empiricism, but really it's about Agile Commerce, Agile Marketing, Experiment as you go, learn as you go. If you have a question about, hey, will this work? Will people buy this? Can I improve this segment of my users, of my buyers? Run an experiment, design an experiment. And if you don't know how to start, we'd be happy to talk about that with you. But modern agile commerce and agile marketing is about running these small, time-boxed experiments that you can learn from and answer, will this work? And will we be successful here? And we tie technology together with the reducing complexity and making pragmatic choices. Try to reduce complexity, like I said earlier, difficult sometimes, but don't just continue to expand complexity, making it difficult for your buyers or potential buyers. Be practical. Am I going to use this? Does this add value? Or am I just bringing additional complexity into the solution? Mm-hmm. And then finally, with these technology choices, we have a lot of organizations that design these very complicated browsing and product finding locations. Don't forget about your search capabilities and being able to dig in and have people find products by just searching.
Internal search, right, Chad?
Internal search, yeah, internal to your commerce and CMS, kind of first-party data, first-party catalog style searching. So finding the data on your site that they can buy instead of having them try to navigate to it. Invest in your team, invest in your people, make sure they understand what the objectives are, how to use the tools, how to think about an overall experience across multiple channels, and really continue to invest in learning. You're not going to be able to move left to right if you've got the best technology in the world and the team doesn't know how to use it or what they're trying to do with it. It's going to be a failure. So really make sure that the team understands where they're going with it. And finally, data. Again, this could be number one, but data really is underlying all of these things. Make sure you've got data in one place, you're using it for reporting, you know what your data means, how to gauge if one of your experiments is successful or not. Are you increasing revenue? If you're trying to increase revenue in a certain segment, how quickly do you want to do that? Will the data tell you that or not? How do you know? And it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, this is a multi-year process. You may realize that you're not collecting the data that you need to gauge if something's a success or not. So turn it on, start collecting it, run your experiments, and make sure that you have it. And we run into this all the time where the profiling, progressive profiling of what's being collected on the visitors, the buyers, is constantly expanding. So this is important. Data is important.
And a lot of our customers use data or analytics, right, for the obvious personalization to personalize the experience. But you can also use it for A/B testing, for example, or even data-driven promotions, right? So being able to suggest the product at the right time based on the analytics and the data that's there.
Yeah, the one example that I've heard that I love, and it's been used on a few blog posts, is trying to sell a bison burger to a vegetarian. And I mean, maybe it's not politically correct to use that example, but if you don't know that your buyer is a vegetarian, you wouldn't want to try to run a promo of a bison burger to a vegetarian. So understanding what they're buying, when they're buying it, what their likes and dislikes are is really, really important to making the right promo choices.
Well, I would say too, I mean, we even see it firsthand with marketing campaigns that we're running. What worked 6 months ago does not work anymore, for lots of different reasons. Some reasons we know, some reasons we don't. But you have to be able to pivot, try new things, and that's the way this works today. The market is just so fluid, moving around, that you have to try different places, different messaging. And it's got to be done in the course of like days, not weeks or months. I mean, you have to pivot every in a couple days usually if something's working. And if it's not, you got to shut it down, try something else.
So I think that's it. I mean, the next slide, I think, is a wrap up of the principles. You know, you can snapshot this in your mind. Again, we'll send this out for everybody to use, but this is basically the journey. These are the things that if you try to do these things, you're definitely going to figure it out and move left to right. And if you need any help, we have a DM3 assessment that can help you kind of pinpoint where you are. We use some of these ideas in the next steps and you know, guiding you on your journey, talking about the different phases. And ultimately, you know, when we run these assessments, where you think you want to go and ultimately where you end up are usually different as you learn, as you continue to increase your skills in marketing. And so it's a really helpful tool to kind of run multiple times. Sometimes we'll run this 3, 4, 5 times for clients.
Yeah, and if anybody, if for some reason you don't get the email with this recording, make sure you check your spam box. It might be stuck in there. Otherwise, you can always reach out to us directly and you know, email me directly. So let's take a. It looks like let's see a couple questions that are popping up here. Let's see. Nowadays. I'm not, let us, we'll reach out to you, Carmel, afterwards and address that question. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but we'll reach out afterwards, you know, and try to get that answered for you. Again, we're going to run a survey, so hopefully you'll see that in your inbox within the next 24 hours to get some feedback both on the content and the platform that we used.
Yeah,
So
love your
Andy,
feedback. I mean, we practice what we preach. So, you know, this is an experiment with a new webinar tool. We want to hear what you think of the tool, how we did today, what we can improve upon, what you want to hear more on. We'll ask you a lot of those questions, and certainly we can't get better without honest feedback. So, you know, please be brutally honest with us, and we'll make improvements.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks
for joining, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.